Hello, students. So, the next reform introduced under the new economic policy was privatization. So, what is privatization? Allowing the private sectors to operate in the sectors which were earlier restricted, or you can say to give an autonomy to work in any sector to them. So this was carried out by denationalizing the sectors, that is transfer of government ownership to the private. Secondly, they limited the scope of public sector. That means the public sector was not given that much importance, and the responsibility was also reduced. The number of public sector was also reduced. All the more, private sectors were allowed to produce all the commodities, goods which were earlier restricted for them or which was kept exclusively for the public sector. And disinvestment. Disinvestment was carried out by selling the part of a public sector unit to the private sector. And apart from that, disinvestment in the form of strategic sale was also carried out. Strategic sales means important public sector units were sold to the private sector with the majority of ownership in the hands of private sector, so that the improvement in the management and working efficiency can be enjoyed by that particular unit. Now let us take up what was the advantage of the privatization. The improvement of public sector performance can be witnessed due to the privatization. Secondly, the budgetary deficit, that means the deficit of countries' revenues and expenditures that was planned during the various year budget, that was reduced to a great extent. And secondly, the cost of production also decreased. That means due to the adoption of better technology and better competitive environment, cost of production was decreased. These were the advantages, but apart from that, there were some disadvantages of privatization. So, what were they? The disadvantages included unbalanced growth. That means the private sector was totally ignored due to the privatization, or you can say there was a growth of private sector and profit motive, and the private sector was always focused on the commodities which were in great demand rather than for the welfare purposes. Less development for the infrastructure. That means there was less scope because infrastructure was usually developed by the public sector, and when more importance, more ownership was under the private sector, so there was a less scope of development of infrastructure. And this affected the standard of living as well. As the rich became more richer and the poor started losing their standard of living, they were becoming more poor and poor day by day. So these were the advantages and disadvantages of privatization. Now next is your globalization under the LPG. Globalization means opening up of the Indian economy to the world economy. Better, I can conclude that it is the integration of Indian economy with the world economy. So, what were the factors promoting globalization at the time? That was advancement in the technology, especially the transport and communication, because more technological changes were adopted in the transport and communication, which helped in spreading the information, bringing the economies, different countries' economies closer due to the better transportation and more information spread, awareness, etc. Liberalization, of course, you have already studied this point. I mean, the policy adopted by the government, that is liberalization, the globalization was promoted. How the globalization was promoted in India? So that was through the channels of globalization. I'll take up for that. That is, first is through trade of goods and services, that is by importing and exporting the goods and services. Secondly, by investing the money, that is through the foreign investments, maybe direct investment or portfolio investment, or taking loan from other countries to establish industries or to meet out the requirements. So foreign direct investment was very much encouraged under this globalization. And use of information technology and outsourcing. India was a very good source of skilled and cheap labor that attracted many MNCs to outsource their services to the Indian people, and that became one of the reason for more and more globalization, and all the more that was the very interesting and important way of getting into globalization. BPO, you must have heard. BPO, business processing centers. So that was very much in uh, demand at that time. All the more to promote globalization and to make smooth trading businesses, World Trade Organization was also set up in January 1995 with 104 members initially. That means 104 members signed this WTO agreement. Earlier, this WTO, there was GATT, that is General Agreement on Trade and Tariff. Uh, it started in 1947 to promote the barrier-free trade, that is no restrictions on the trade from different countries. So that was started in 1947 with only 23 members, but by the end of 1994 it had 118 members get. But later on, due to its certain drawbacks, it was changed and a new organization was set up in the name of WTO in 95, and initially it had 104 members. So what was the objective of WTO? The objective was to facilitate international trade, to establish rule-based trading regions or regime, to reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers, to resolve trade disputes, to enlarge trade and production of services, to ensure optimum utilization of world resources, and all the more to ensure the exchange rates between the countries. So these were the various objectives of WTO that facilitated the trade. So this is very important for our Indian economy, because Indian economy also became one of the member of WTO, and we are into the global market, and the WTO is trying to facilitate the smooth trade of our country with other countries. So that's all for today's video. Thank you.